Burn, baby, burn.
Burn those MAGA hats. MAGA Republicans giving Donald Trump the middle finger and saying, bye-bye, we are out. A mass exodus away from Donald Trump. Take a look at this headline right here from the Washington Post. Republicans see scary lack of enthusiasm among core voters ahead of the midterms. Pollsters and GOP groups are raising the alarm about an unmotivated base in an election year that would be tough no matter what, given the president's low approval. Everyone who has joined our membership, we are now 60 plus members strong. This is just $9 a month, and our goal is to reach 1,000 members so we can continue running America Facticity as an independent journalism platform without corporate funding, outside pressure, or influence. Your support helps us keep this work real, clean, and focused on the truth. If you haven't already, please like the video, share it, subscribe, and leave a comment so this video can reach more people who need to see this reality. Thank you again for standing with independent journalism.
Rosie O'Donnell has spent the better part of 2 decades being called a loser, a woman out of control, and most recently, a woman the President of the United States has publicly threatened to strip of her American citizenship, a power the office does not actually possess. And this month, sitting across from Jake Tapper on live television, she finally said out loud what a lot of people watching this fight from the outside have suspected for years, that the reason Donald Trump cannot let her go has less to do with comedy and more to do with what she represents to him. He's obsessed with Barack Obama, and I think that's because he's innately a racist, O'Donnell said. And he's obsessed with me because he's innately a sexist. That is not a throwaway insult. That is a 20-year hypothesis delivered live, on air, by the one woman who has absorbed more public abuse from this president than almost anyone else in American life who isn't also a former political opponent. Before we walk through exactly how this fight started, how it has escalated, and why a sitting president once found himself explaining a comedian's move to Ireland to a visibly confused Irish head of government in the Oval Office, we need to catch you up on what's happening across the rest of the Trump presidency in the last 24 hours, because it has nothing to do with Rosie O'Donnell, and it deserves your attention just as much. It is worth pausing before we go any further on just how long 20 years actually is in the context of a single public feud. Rosie O'Donnell first criticized Donald Trump when he was still, first and foremost, a reality television personality and real estate developer, years before he ever announced a run for president. In the time since, she has watched 3 other people occupy the Oval Office, moved across an ocean, survived a heart attack, and built and rebuilt her public career multiple times over. Trump, across that same 20 years, has been a television star, a presidential candidate, a one-term president, a defeated incumbent, and now a 2-term president fighting an active war overseas. And yet, through every single one of those chapters, in interviews, in tweets, in an Oval Office meeting with a foreign head of state, her name keeps resurfacing in his.
Let's play it.
CNN investigation finds that Trump administration cuts created a, quote, perfect storm for a slowed government response to the parasitic outbreak. That's according to a source. The cases are concentrated in the Midwest, but more than half of states are reporting cyclospora infections, which cause explosive diarrhea and major cramps. And we wouldn't get to TMI there, except you need to know that information because those are the hallmarks of what we're dealing with here. A former federal lab official told CNN that the cuts led to, quote, the loss of specialized staff and the loss of hands on deck needed to identify the source of the outbreaks. Here's one example of the lagging response. The first cases of the parasite, they actually began way back in mid-May. The state of Michigan, which is the epicenter of the outbreak, issued its warning on July 1st. But it took 2 weeks before the CDC issued its advisory.
More Trump supporters over here, and it goes back to that first one again, but I'll show you this also. Let's play it.
This war has been it's been taxing on everyone. And I'm on a fixed income, and so it's a you know, other ones that on fixed income are, I'm really feeling it.
You could talk directly to the president. We know he likes to watch TV. What would you tell him about this war?
President Trump, you shouldn't have got us in this war and was going to end it fast, soon, and now you're starting all over again.
Has the war helped your life at all?
No. For one thing, it causes me angst, makes me angry. And as I said, I'm very disillusioned. My entire family is disillusioned. And we are and were Trump supporters, but this is, to me, he's drawn a line in the sand. And that's how I feel. That's how we all feel.
Now, you're seeing things on message boards like this.
That kind of durability is not typical of an ordinary celebrity spat. Most feuds of this kind burn hot for a news cycle or two, and fade as both parties move on to other things. This one has not faded even once in 2 full decades, and that fact alone is worth sitting with before assigning any explanation to it at all. Right now in U.S. politics. As of today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is at the White House meeting directly with Trump on the single most consequential open question in the Iran war, whether Tehran is actually negotiating in good faith. According to reports citing sources in Jerusalem, Netanyahu is presenting intelligence alleging that Iran has significantly expanded activity at its Pickaxe Mountain nuclear facility, and that Israeli intelligence believes thousands of centrifuges were relocated there last fall. Trump himself has said the facility remains a serious concern and that the United States would likely strike it very heavily and pretty soon, though he has also acknowledged the U.S. doesn't have the relocation claim independently confirmed on record. That is a genuinely significant gap. The president is describing plans for a heavy strike based on an ally's intelligence assessment that his own government has not yet verified. Alongside that meeting, there have been fresh reminders of just how unsettled the region remains. The Israeli Air Force intercepted an unmanned drone near the Jordanian border this week, with its origin still under review. Iran, meanwhile, executed 2 men this week who were convicted in connection with the killing of police officers during the anti-regime protests that swept the country back in January. And U.S. Central Command has reported intercepting Iranian ballistic missiles in what it described as an attempted surprise attack. A reminder that even during a declared pause in American strikes, the underlying conflict has not actually gone quiet. There is at least one piece of good news buried in all of this for anyone worried about their own wallet. Brent crude has fallen to roughly $86 a barrel amid the pause in U.S. strikes, down meaningfully from the highs this war produced just weeks ago.
Take a look at this polling data right here from state regime media CBS. Are Donald Trump's policies making you financially better off, worse off, or the same? Only 13% say better off. You compare this to January 2025 to the present. It's net negative 45 today, where it was plus 12 is what the MAGAs and everybody was expecting, not us here, back in January of 2025. We're seeing tens of thousands of posts like this directed our way, and we're seeing it on MAGA message boards. We're seeing it on Truth Social in response to Donald Trump's deranged posts. Let me share it with you. From a voter, a former supporter, Donald, they can all go straight to hell, referring to Trump's cabinet. My hope is Trump and Vance are impeached and voted to be removed from office. At that time, I hope they are thoroughly investigated. If found guilty, then they need to go to jail. Let's take a look at this story from the Washington Post. Let's zoom in right here. The cost of living right now is unattainable. People can't afford anything. Things are far less affordable now than under former President Biden. Farmers are being screwed. Manufacturing jobs are being lost. The American people can't afford everything. Take a look at Western Iowa, once an area that you would think is a Trump area. In Western Iowa, 3-time Trump voter Lance Sulentic of rural Harrison County called the past 3 presidential elections the worst 3 mistakes that I have made in my entire life, saying that Donald Trump failed to keep his campaign promises. Higher gas prices are costing him an extra $300 to $500 a month to ride his motorcycle. Quote, "We voted for Trump and he did the opposite of what he said he was going to do," said the 56-year-old retired insurance agent. He cited unfulfilled pledges on $2 gas, cheaper food, halved energy prices, rebate checks, no new wars, building the wall, and deporting 30 million illegal immigrants. Sulentic said he may sit out this year's election or vote Democrat.
But oil markets remain, in the words of analysts tracking the conflict, extremely sensitive to any new escalation. Meaning today's meeting between Trump and Netanyahu, and whatever comes out of it, could just as easily send that number climbing right back up as it could stabilize it further. So that is where things actually stand. A live, high-stakes meeting between two heads of state over nuclear intelligence neither government has fully verified, a drone incident under investigation, executions tied to a protest movement barely 6 months old, an intercepted missile attack, and an oil market holding its breath. Keep all of that in mind because it is happening in the same 24-hour news cycle in which a former television host living in self-imposed exile in Ireland has once again become one of the most discussed names in American politics. There is a version of governance where a president facing a meeting this consequential in nuclear intelligence, a strike decision, an oil market reacting in real time, would have essentially no bandwidth left over for anything else that day. That has never been how this presidency actually operates. The same information ecosystem that will carry today's Netanyahu meeting will, within the same news cycle, almost certainly carry another mention of O'Donnell, of Obama, of whichever critic happens to be topical that week. That capacity to run both tracks simultaneously, high-stakes nuclear diplomacy and a 20-year-old celebrity feud at the same volume on the same day is itself worth noticing because it tells you something about how this White House actually allocates its attention regardless of what the official schedule says it's supposed to be doing. Timeline 2006, where it started. The feud traces back to December of 2006 when Rosie O'Donnell, then a co-host of The View, criticized Trump on air for the lenient way he handled Miss USA title holder Tara Conner after a substance abuse controversy, suggesting his own personal history made him an odd choice to lecture anyone on morality. Trump's response set the tone for the next 2 decades. He called O'Donnell a real loser and a woman out of control.
Last night, that there's basically a complete breakage, a complete rupture in the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia. Obviously, that's why Rubio, when he was in the Middle East, did not visit Saudi Arabia. MBS doesn't, to some extent, they're stuck a little bit with some of the legacy America stuff, but we're learning more about how this rupture really formed in the biggest way. So the Trump regime announces back in May they were going to escalate the invasion of Iran with something called Project Freedom. And without asking Saudi Arabia, they just start basically showing up and saying, all right, we're using the air bases there. We're going to Saudi Arabia, your airspace, your air bases. Where are you? Saudi Arabia like, nah, we're not doing that. We're not going back to war. Nope. Saudi Arabia's like, we're cutting deals with Iran. Okay. We're going to do a deal with Iran that we're going to broker a de-escalation understanding. We're going to broker it through Pakistan, and Pakistan brokered this. Now, Donald Trump's message to his supporters when he was in Georgia the other day and then in the White House, this is his message in Georgia. Then he gave a speech in D.C. When he gives his speeches, he says, data centers, man, the most popular thing. That's what Trump says. He says, we need to get data centers everywhere. We're going to put data centers in your community and you're going to get rich. You're going to get so rich. Nobody wants data centers in their communities right now. But this is what Trump is saying. Trump goes, MAGA wants endless war. MAGA wants higher prices. MAGA wants data centers. MAGA loves Mark Levin and Laura Loomer. Here, play this clip of Trump.
And even communities compared to other communities. You have some communities that really want this. This isn't all negative stuff. You have communities that really want the data centers. And frankly, those are the smart communities because it means tremendous numbers of jobs, very little actual disruption. And the ones that don't want it, the happiest people in the world are foreign countries, number one, and number two, other communities within our country because they're begging for them to be there. And some of them are great communities, very, very forward-looking communities.
It was on its face a specific bounded media controversy, a talk show host offering an opinion about a beauty pageant scandal. It did not stay bounded. 2011, 2016, a decade of recurring jabs. The pattern repeated itself on an almost predictable schedule for the next 10 years. In 2011, when O'Donnell announced her engagement, Trump tweeted, "I feel sorry for Rosie's new partner in love, a true loser." In 2012, after O'Donnell suffered a heart attack, Trump's message managed to combine an insult with something almost resembling warmth. Rosie, Get better fast. I'm starting to miss you. In 2014, O'Donnell told People magazine that Trump's ongoing attacks constituted the worst bullying she had experienced in her public life. And Trump's response was to reframe the entire conflict as her own fault. Rosie, no offense, you started it. In 2016, as Trump's presidential campaign gathered steam, O'Donnell endorsed Hillary Clinton and posted flatly, "He will never be president." When he won anyway, she wrote 3 words that have aged into something close to a founding text of the entire resistance-era genre: God help us all. Notice the shape of that decade. Nearly every escalation in that stretch was initiated by Trump, often over matters that had nothing to do with politics at all: an engagement, a health scare, a magazine interview. O'Donnell's most memorable line from that period wasn't even an attack. It was a prediction. It happened to be wrong, and Trump has never let her forget it. But it is worth remembering that the entire subsequent fight grew out of a media personality expressing skepticism that a reality television star could become president, a position plenty of serious political analysts held at the time. It is also worth examining the actual content of what Trump chose to attack across that decade, because the pattern is instructive. A tweet about her engagement targeted her romantic life. A tweet timed to her heart attack targeted her physical health. However backhandedly, it was dressed up as well-wishing. Neither of those moments involved O'Donnell saying a single new word about Trump.
And actually, that's what a lot of Middle East countries have done right now. So, as the Wall Street Journal also reported, that the Trump regime is saying that they're considering options to escalate for a ground invasion of Iran, and you have J.D. Vance saying, oh, you know what, this MOU is really just a temporary period at this point where we are going to just test them. We still have a lot of games we want to play with Iran. That's what J.D. Vance, remember the video I did? We have a lot of games we want to play. We still have got a lot of cards that we want to play. We will see. The American people don't want to see. We don't want to play games. But regardless, most Middle East countries at this point want nothing to do with American military presence. And I think if we were to invade again, you'll see most of these Middle East countries saying, you're not going to use our airspace. You're not going to use our air bases. You could try to threaten us or do whatever you want. All the United States has done is they've pushed all of these countries to be closer to Iran. They moved them away from the United States. And basically, it's Trump and Netanyahu right now. And we know from day one of all of this, Netanyahu just wants to continue to warmonger and invade. And he said, I'm not leaving Lebanon. I'm not leaving Syria. I'm not leaving Gaza. That's what the Netanyahu regime has been saying over and over. He was in Lebanon, like flaunting that he was there yesterday. And he wants to bring the United States back into war. And we, the people, have to say enough. We don't want to be in this war. This has caused so much. This ain't a game. This ain't a talking. 3 different names. When he was in high school, he said he was gay. And then he said he hates gay people. And then he's Appalachia and he hates Trump. And now he wants to lick Trump's feet. I mean, the hell is going on here? And then J.D. Vance says, the goal for the Iran deal is that we want to refill our stocks of weapons. The goal of doing a peace deal is to rearm. Are you stupid? You're saying that out loud, number one. I mean, you realize Iran is watching that also. And what bad fate. You did a peace deal so you can rearm? Yeah, we don't want that. We don't want that, JD. Here, play this clip.
So I think what the president has told us to do is use this MOU to sort of refill the world's oil economy. To refill some stocks, and then to see where the hand is.
And then JD goes, this is the end of the beginning. There is a lot more games to play, and there were a lot more cards that we're going to see. What do you think? This is a game of like magic? Like those card games you played when you were getting magic cards? What do you think this is? This is real life. This is war and peace. This is you all Trump regime sickos killing little girls in Manab. This is all of you engaged in horrific war crimes. We got more games to play. This isn't games. These are people's lives.
She simply existed publicly, going through ordinary life events, falling in love, suffering a medical emergency, and each time, those private moments became occasions for a sitting or future president to insert a jab. That is a meaningfully different pattern than 2 public figures trading barbs over policy disagreements. It is a pattern of one person monitoring another's personal life for opportunities to insert himself, uninvited, into her most vulnerable moments. January 2025. The move to Ireland. After Trump's return to office, O'Donnell relocated to Ireland, citing concerns about her safety and about the erosion of equal rights protections in the country she was leaving behind. She has since described the move in unusually candid personal terms, telling The Hill she was sleeping better once she was no longer inside the daily churn of American news coverage centered on a president she has spent 2 decades sparring with. March 17th, 2026, the Oval Office moment. On St. Patrick's Day, Trump welcomed Irish Taoiseach Micheál Martin to the Oval Office, a customary annual visit between the two countries' leaders. At some point in the conversation, Trump brought up O'Donnell's relocation and asked Martin, apparently in earnest, whether he knew who she was. Martin's reply, delivered with what reporting described as visible confusion, was simply, "You're better off not knowing." Trump used the moment to recount the 2 decades of history, repeating his original woman out of control and loser characterizations from 2006 in front of a visiting head of state on a day meant to celebrate the diplomatic relationship between the two countries. O'Donnell, for her part, did not let the awkwardness of that exchange pass without acknowledgement. Appearing later on RTE's The Late Late Show in Ireland, she revealed that she had personally written to the Taoiseach's office afterward. "I wrote the Taoiseach with a little note, apology to his email, and got a note back that they had received it and thanked me," she said, explaining that she wanted Martin to understand the full history behind Trump's comments and to apologize for having put him in an uncomfortable diplomatic position during what should have been a routine ceremonial visit. Sit with that exchange for a second because it is a remarkable thing to have actually happened. A sitting American president used a formal head of state meeting, one of a small handful of set-piece diplomatic rituals on the calendar each year, to relitigate a 20-year-old media feud with a private citizen, to the visible confusion of the foreign leader sitting across from him. And it was the private citizen, not the president, who took it upon herself afterward to smooth things over diplomatically with the visiting country's leader. That is not the behavior of the person who started this fight. That is the behavior of someone who has, at this point, simply learned to clean up the mess. Consider what that division of labor actually reveals. The Taoiseach of Ireland arrived at the White House to discuss matters of genuine bilateral consequence: trade, investment, the broader relationship between two allied nations. He left having been asked, apparently without much lead-up, whether he was familiar with an American comedian who had relocated to his country.
Now, we've heard from Trump supporters, hat tip to MS Now. They've interviewed a bunch. Play this clip.
President Trump campaigned on no more foreign wars. You've obviously supported him.
3 times. 3 times. Very disappointed. My entire family is very disappointed. I don't feel like it is our war to fight, but here we are. And I did not think when the war started that it was going to be a 12-day, a 2-week, a 2-month. I'm like, here we go. And here we are. And I don't see it ending anytime soon. And I was a Trump supporter. I'm very disappointed.
You know, when it comes to things even just like the cyclospora outbreak, the explosive diarrhea, I mean, just think about whether it's a measles outbreak, explosive diarrhea outbreaks, Ebola spreading. You know, there's such basic common sense things that the Trump regime just gutted with USAID and Doge, and they took a hacksaw to the federal government and just destroyed programs. They'll be like, no more vaccines for our troops. And then they all get sick from the flu because you got rid of the flu vaccine. Just dumb stuff. And I think Americans are like, dude, just enough of this. Stop being stupid. Stop being dangerously dumb. Here, play this clip from CNN about
Man of the Year. Man of the Year, Donald Trump. Well, you, Time Magazine. You, seriously.
You're despicable. You're an idiot. You're a stupid loser, fat FUC. You're ruining the economy. You got us into forever wars. The country is in shambles. No one can afford anything. I'm reading the comments of what people are saying to him on his own social media platform, which is all like MAGA people. Stop it or help. Be like Reagan. Pull us out of this now. Your cabinet sucks. How about let's wrap it up with this and stop this silly posting? So very, very tacky, Donnie. How low can you go? Wait, I don't know, but I'm sure we'll see soon enough. Getting a little desperate, are we? Dear Mr. President, I wonder how much time and energy you can dedicate to your important presidential office if you spend all day posting such superfluous things here. Another person, you are a cruel and immature man. Your behavior is beneath the office. Donald Trump then on the main White House account posting weird AI cartoons of himself on Instagram, posting ICE assaulting and like sexually harassing and groping and grabbing and detaining like actual aliens.
The leader of a sovereign nation was put in the position of having to navigate an unplanned detour into another government's celebrity gossip in real time, with cameras present during what was supposed to be a ceremonial and diplomatically significant occasion. And then it fell to O'Donnell, again, a private citizen with no formal role in either government, to write a personal note of apology to smooth over an awkwardness she did not create and had no ability to prevent. If you are looking for a single moment that captures the imbalance at the center of this entire feud, that is very nearly a perfect one. The president created the diplomatic mess, and the comedian cleaned it up. July 2025. The citizenship threat. Months earlier, in July of 2025, the feud had already escalated into territory well beyond schoolyard insults. Trump posted on Truth Social that he was giving serious consideration to taking away her citizenship, describing O'Donnell as a threat to humanity and suggesting she simply remain in Ireland rather than return. It is worth stating plainly what every legal analyst who covered the story at the time pointed out. The President of the United States does not have the constitutional authority to unilaterally strip a natural-born citizen of their citizenship over political disagreements. It is not a close legal question. It is not a power that exists. Trump's threat was, functionally, a fantasy of authoritarian punishment aimed at a private citizen for the crime of criticizing him, dressed up as a policy consideration. O'Donnell's response did not pull punches either, calling Trump a criminal con man, sexual abusing liar with dementia who lacks empathy, compassion, and basic humanity. The White House, for its part, dismissed her response as unhinged rants reflecting late-stage TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, the umbrella diagnosis this administration has applied to virtually every sustained critic it has faced, from late-night hosts to rock stars to, now, a comedian who has been out of the country for the better part of 2 years. It is worth pointing out the asymmetry embedded in that particular exchange of insults, because it is not a simple case of two people trading equally serious barbs. O'Donnell's insults, however sharp, were words, descriptions of Trump's character, delivered from a private citizen with no power to act on them. Trump's threat was categorically different. It was the President of the United States publicly floating the use of the machinery of the federal government to strip an American-born critic of her legal citizenship, a threat that, however legally hollow, was made from a position of actual institutional power. One side of that exchange was venting. The other side was, at least rhetorically, threatening to weaponize the state against a private citizen for speech. Those two things do not occupy the same moral or legal category, no matter how similarly heated they might sound side by side in a headline. June 2026, the Iran War Reckoning. When American and Israeli strikes killed Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei during the escalating Iran conflict, O'Donnell resurfaced with a pointed reminder of Trump's own words. She posted two of his 2024 campaign quotes side by side.
Remember, Donald Trump promised gas prices would be under $2, that he would not be involved in never-ending wars, and that the price of energy would be cut in half, and that he would end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours, that groceries would be more affordable in 24 hours. Now, Republicans see a scary lack of enthusiasm among core voters ahead of midterms. In reliably red Iowa, where an open governor and Senate races look surprisingly competitive, AFP action door knocking in suburban Des Moines found voters critical of the Iran war and high inflation. Some even say they'll back Democrats this fall. AFP Action's Nathan Nascimento says about 1 in 5 reliable Republican-based voters are at risk in November, may stay home or vote Democrat across Iowa, Ohio, North Carolina, Montana, New Hampshire, Michigan. Inflation and the economy are on top of everybody's mind. This is a big chunk. This is a scary, scary number. reaching them at the door usually moves them toward GOP candidates, or at least away from Democrats toward undecided. And that 20% doesn't even include low propensity Trump voters who turn out for him but often skip the midterms. Signals Mitchell Brown say Dems are as fired up as 2018. GOP is lagging hard. Young men under 40, key to Trump's 2024 wins, are most at risk, the young people.
It was post after post like that of Donald Trump saying, I'm going to give this state money for disaster relief and that state disaster relief money. Why? Because one of the things we learned yesterday in more detail than we ever got before, because Trump had to produce his financial disclosures from 2025, is the extent of his grift. The number of financial side deals the Trump family is running is so shocking sometimes that it quite literally shocks your conscience and says, is this real? And it is. So the Trump organization made about $2.29 billion in crypto schemes in 2025 alone, according to Donald Trump's 2025 disclosures, which were just released on June 30th of 2026. You know how investors did on those crypto schemes? Well, they lost $2.28 billion. When you actually look at Donald Trump's personal net worth increase from just the crypto schemes alone, Donald Trump extracted $1.1 billion added to his net worth. Liquid cash to Donald Trump divided as follows. $635.1 million Trump made off his meme coin royalties, $236.3 million for the World Liberty financial token sales, $196.9 million for sale of ownership interest in the US $1 stablecoin venture, $65.6 million sale of part of Trump's stake in World Liberty Financial, $6 million for Melania Trump's NFT sales collectible business, $1.82 million for the Ethereum validator. By the way, Trump says, I'm the crypto president. I'm the big...
If Kamala wins, only death and destruction await because she is the candidate of endless wars. I am the candidate of peace. I am peace. And I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars. Her caption was simple. He lies only and always hashtag impeach Trump. Whatever you think of O'Donnell as a messenger, that particular post did not require any embellishment to land. Those are Trump's own words, spoken during his own campaign, contrasted directly against a documented, ongoing military conflict that had, by that point, already stretched on for months. The gap between the promise and the outcome is not something O'Donnell invented. It is something Trump said on camera that a search engine can verify in seconds. This is, in fact, one of the more interesting turns in the entire 20-year saga, because it marks a shift in the nature of O'Donnell's criticism. For most of the previous 2 decades, the fight was personal. Insults about weight, about relationships, about health, about temperament. The Iran war post was something else entirely, a substantive, policy-based critique, using the president's own recorded words against his own recorded actions, with no personal insult attached to it at all, beyond the closing hashtag. That shift matters, because it means the obsession O'Donnell describes cannot be explained away as simply 2 petty celebrities trading barbs forever. At least some of what she has said, especially recently, has moved into the register of actual political accountability journalism, the same register Kimmel, Colbert, and Obama himself have all occupied at various points in their own separate conflicts with this administration. The through line connecting all of those separate feuds is the same one running through this entire video series. People keep pointing out contradictions between what this president said and what he actually did, and the response keeps being about the messenger rather than the message. July 13th, 2026, innately a sexist, which brings us to this month and the interview that gives this story its title. Appearing on The View alongside guest host Jake Tapper, O'Donnell offered her most direct theory yet for why this fight has lasted 20 years, while so many of Trump's other celebrity feuds have faded. He's obsessed with Barack Obama, and I think that's because he's innately a racist, she said. And he's obsessed with me because he's innately a sexist. She noted, with a mixture of pride and exhaustion, that she has found herself in company with other long-running Trump targets like Whoopi Goldberg and Robert De Niro. I seem to be, the obsession he can't get rid of.
She also took aim at Trump's recent AI-generated Truth Social video depicting himself as a doctor diagnosing his critics with Trump derangement syndrome and questioned his mental sharpness directly, pointing to a string of recent verbal gaffes and misstated names. His demise is visible and apparent to everyone who is not willfully blind. July 16, 2026. The schoolyard theory. Days later, O'Donnell offered a second, more personal theory for the feud's origin, tying it directly to geography and class rather than gender alone.
Finds funny torturing migrants by calling them aliens. And then the comments there, we're screwed. Historians will study this nonsense for ages. The majority of Americans want you impeached and convicted. Americans love Obama. Doing everything but lowering gas prices, huh? To which Donald Trump then posts another AI meme attacking Republicans. You see this spine? This is what I want to put back in Republicans. Comments like this. This is unprofessional. When you're actually doing great things for the American people, then you can try to be cute and funny. You've got former U.S. Army Colonel and used to be a big former Trump supporter, Douglas McGregor. RT, the Russian TV network, is quoting him as saying, Trump had to respond to the donors, the Zionist billionaires that put him there. They're attacking him right there. Let me share this with you as well. This is from state regime media CBS. They caught up with Wayne Schoenberg, a Trump voter who transports luxury vehicles across the country, who says rising gas prices tied to the conflict in Iran is crushing his business. He spends $1,000 more on fuel per trip right now. Let's play this clip.
I'm a hard-working American guy, and I'm getting shafted at the pump. That's how I feel.
Wayne Schoenberger is a Trump voter, and he's fed up with the war in Iran.
Being a Trump voter, seeing the gas prices where they're at, what's your message to him?
Like, step in and help.
Do you have any opinion about the war in Iran? I mean, do you think that we should be there?
I don't even know why we're there. No, I don't think we should be there. He blew them up 7,000 times already in the last 4 months. That's what he keeps saying. I'm going to level your whole country. Well, do something over here. Don't worry about what they're doing over there. Let them run their country. We're not over there. Like, look at us. We're the ones suffering for this war.
How much more would you say that you're paying?
I'm easily spending $900 more a trip.
Almost $1,000 a trip.
Yeah, easily.
He transports luxury vehicles across the country and says gas prices are becoming too much to bear.
We can't swallow that cost. So the sad thing is it goes to the consumer. And sometimes I swallow some of that just because I need the clients. You know, I don't want to lose a client, but that's hard for me to do and still make profit.
And he's actually had to slow down the number of trips he takes per month because of the price of gasoline. According to Gas Buddy, Americans are spending roughly $350 million more per day on gas than they were.
I think I trigger him like a PTSD response of all his failures in his life as a kid, she said, describing herself as representative of the tough, probably gay Irish girls who didn't take some from no stupid rich boy wannabe that she believes rejected a young Trump growing up in the same general New York milieu. The reaction online was sharply divided. Plenty of commentators pushed back hard, accusing her of narcissism and suggesting she was the one who couldn't let the feud go, with some arguing she had initiated the original 2006 dispute and had no standing to complain about the response it produced. That criticism deserves to be taken seriously rather than waved away, because it identifies something genuinely worth grappling with. A psychological theory about why someone behaves the way they do is inherently unfalsifiable in a way that a factual claim about, say, uranium removal percentages or campaign promises is not. Nobody can definitively prove or disprove a claim about what triggers a childhood-rooted psychological response in another person, and O'Donnell herself is not a psychiatrist offering a clinical diagnosis. It is fair to note that this specific piece of her commentary sits closer to speculation than to the more strictly factual material found elsewhere in this same timeline. The citizenship threat, the campaign quotes, the Oval Office exchange. Holding both of those things in mind at once, that some of what O'Donnell has said this year is rigorously factual, and some of it is a more speculative theory about psychology, is a more honest way to evaluate this story than treating every word she said with the same evidentiary weight. July 27th, 2026. 20 years of him using me as a punchline. Most recently, O'Donnell told People magazine that the toll of this fight has been genuinely psychological, not merely professional. It's like a post-traumatic stress disorder for me, considering it's been 20 years of him using me as a punchline, she said, adding that if the entire saga were pitched as fiction, nobody would believe that a comedian's criticism of a reality television host could spiral into 2 decades of sustained presidential antagonism. She credited distance, both physical in Ireland and psychological, from the churn of American news cycles, with allowing her, in her words, to reclaim myself, who I was before all that went down. Reactions. Public reaction to O'Donnell's sexism theory has broken down along familiar lines, but a few threads are worth examining directly rather than dismissing outright. Critics have pointed out accurately that O'Donnell was the one who first criticized Trump back in 2006 and have argued this undercuts any narrative in which she is purely a victim of unprovoked targeting. That is a fair point as far as it goes. O'Donnell did initiate the original exchange, but it does not actually address her core claim, which is not about who spoke first in 2006. It is about why, nearly 20 years and dozens of unrelated news cycles later, she remains one of a small handful of names Trump keeps returning to, unprompted, across topics as varied as engagements, health scares, foreign diplomatic meetings, and immigration policy.
We're utterly humiliated as a nation, utterly humiliated. And then Donald Trump posts AI images. Goodbye engine room, like AI images of AI Iranian boats blowing up. Then he posts like weird AI videos of the Capitol building. Panic in DC. Panic in DC? Dude, what the hell are you? Grow up. Behave like a grown-up. What the hell are you doing? Or Donald Trump doing AI videos of himself as a pirate, taking over an Iranian tanker, and then saying, it's our oil tanker now. Yes, Donald, the proud U.S. Navy is now reduced to AI pirates. Well done. And then he keeps on posting like also weird AI racist memes, taking over tankers of Iranian people wearing like white garb. Okay, why are they wearing that outfit? Okay, it's our tanker now. Okay, Donald Trump, the pirate. Oh yeah, the United States Navy, the proud Navy, is a bunch of weird AI pirates. Well done. And the MAGA people hate this stuff. Take a listen to what he said. Here, play this clip.
Off entirely.
Is there anything that you think Trump can do to like regain the support of the, I guess, Gen Z and millennial right?
No, it's over. People see what he's made of. And Hunter's right. He's a liar. He is a liar. He is a bullshit artist. And especially, you look at what he did with the Epstein files, with the war in Iran, what he did to Thomas Massie.
This guy named Thomas Massie. There's something wrong with him. They just vote no. They love voting no. They think it's good politically.
You realize that if you are America first, you have no place in this Republican Party. Because he said it. He said our Republican Party, or rather, he said MAGA is Mark Levin, Laura Loomer, Randy Fine. He said, and who is not MAGA? Megyn Kelly, Tucker, Alex Jones, Candace. And I think most Republicans said, well, we're with those other people. We're not MAGA anymore. So,
and then more from Fuentes here talking to Hunter about they want the Democrats to win now. They said they want Democrats to win. Here, play this clip.
No, I have a lot of confidence only because I think the Democrats are going to take the House in 26, which I support. I'm telling my people, vote Democrat. We want the Democrats in the House because what they're going to do is they're going to use the oversight powers to bring all the corruption to light. Because I know Republicans will watch this, and when you say, you know, we didn't commit crime, they're going to be skeptical. However, for the sake of argument, let's say the income you made during Biden was ill-gotten. For the sake of example, it's just doesn't hold a candle. It doesn't even come close, doesn't even touch Jared Kushner, Howard Lutnick, Steve Witkoff, Don Jr., Trump himself. It's just a different sport. It's a different game entirely. And I want all that corruption to be revealed. And I think the Democrats are going to do it. I hope they get impeached. I don't think they'll be removed from office, but I think it'll basically drag this administration to a halt. And then in 28, I think there's an opportunity for a clean reset.
Plenty of public figures have criticized Trump once or several times and faded from his attention entirely. The question O'Donnell is actually raising is why she, specifically, along with a short list of other frequent targets, never did. Legal commentary on the citizenship threat has been close to unanimous. There is no serious constitutional pathway for a president to unilaterally revoke a natural-born citizen's citizenship as a punishment for criticism. And analysts covering the July 2025 threat treated it less as a genuine policy proposal than as a rhetorical escalation designed to intimidate. The fact that the threat generated exactly the kind of viral, sustained coverage a genuine escalation would produce, without ever advancing toward anything resembling an actual legal action, supports that reading. It is worth spending a moment on why an empty legal threat can still function as an effective form of intimidation, even when every serious analyst agrees it has no chance of actually succeeding. A private citizen on the receiving end of a presidential threat to revoke their citizenship does not have the luxury of simply trusting that the threat is legally hollow and moving on with her day. She has to absorb, publicly, the experience of the head of state of her own country suggesting she does not belong in it. A threat that carries genuine psychological and reputational weight regardless of its legal enforceability. That is precisely the kind of chilling effect the First Amendment's protections against government retaliation for speech are designed to guard against. Not just the successful punishment of a critic, but the climate of fear created by a powerful official publicly floating punishment as a possibility, even when the follow-through never materializes. Coverage of the St. Patrick's Day Oval Office moment has been almost uniformly framed as an embarrassment for the administration rather than a win of any kind. A sitting president bringing up a decades-old celebrity feud unprompted during a formal diplomatic meeting to a visibly bewildered foreign head of state who had to be told, essentially, that ignorance of the topic was a mercy. That framing matters because it wasn't generated by O'Donnell's allies. It emerged from straightforward, descriptive reporting on what actually happened in that room. What is notably absent across nearly every documented flashpoint in this entire 20-year timeline is any instance of Trump engaging with O'Donnell's substantive criticism on its own terms. Not her personality, not her history, not her weight or her health, but the actual content of what she has said about his record. When she quoted his own 2024 campaign promises back at him during the Iran war escalation, no response addressed the contradiction between "I am the candidate of peace" and an active months-long military conflict. When she raised questions about his mental sharpness this month, the response has been silence rather than a substantive defense. The pattern, again, is personal insult in place of engagement, the same pattern that shows up in nearly every other fight this administration has picked with a public critic, regardless of who that critic happens to be. There is also a broader commentary worth noting about how this specific feud gets covered compared to others involving male critics.
Hate Donald Trump, Latinos hate Donald Trump, everybody else does as well, but those were groups that Donald Trump made some inroads on. I mean, you had Donald Trump posting yesterday photos of Caitlin Collins, AI, as Dylan Mulvaney, right, as we're in this catastrophic and unlawful war where Trump says we're going to open the gates of hell, and then actually says, no, we're going to do a deal. We're going to open the gates of hell. We're going to do a deal. This is what he's posting, attacking the transgender community, attacking Caitlin Collins after he did that during the White House Correspondents' Dinner and nobody laughed. It's like, what the hell are you doing? And all of the comments on Trump's social media platform are literally cursing him out. And, you know, the whole day, yes, Trump made like 100 posts. He posted AI images, weird cartoons of Bruce Springsteen saying I'm stupid and mocking Chris Christie as being fat. Donald Trump, while backing down and surrendering yet again to Iran. We should never have been in this catastrophic war in the first place. But Trump will say, open up the gates of hell. And then Iran will say, okay, you ready for us? We're going to keep on blowing up your bases in the Middle East, Donald. And then Donald Trump backs down. We run out of munitions. Trump DOJ filed the amicus brief for the Supreme Court to get immunity for glyphosate production. And the Supreme Court gave immunity, so states can't go after any of the companies that use glyphosate or these herbicides and cause cancer. It's a pro-pesticide, herbicide, pro-carcinogen regime. And their right-wing Supreme Court blessed it. It happened in plain view, right? And Trump's executive order promoting glyphosate, because we're never under the National Defense Act. It was a double whammy. Trump got us all into never-ending wars. and then said, because we're in the never-ending wars, now we need glyphosate to kill everybody with cancer to fuel the never-ending wars. Guys, you can't make this stuff up. And then I'll share this with you as well. You had Nick Fuentes talking with Hunter Biden, and he was asked on Channel 5, the podcast Channel 5. I like the work they do over on that Channel 5. And here's what they said. So any chance you'd ever go back, or people like you who supported Trump will ever go back to supporting Trump?
Several observers have pointed out that Trump's fights with male celebrities, Bill Maher, Bruce Springsteen, Jimmy Kimmel, tend to get covered primarily as ideological or professional clashes, disagreements over policy or comedic territory. Coverage of the O'Donnell feud, by contrast, has always carried an additional undertone focused on her appearance, her weight, and her personal relationships in a way that rarely shows up in coverage of Trump's conflicts with male critics. That asymmetry in how the coverage itself has been shaped over 2 decades lends at least some circumstantial support to O'Donnell's own theory about what's actually driving this particular fight, independent of anything she has said about it herself. Closing take. 2 decades is a long time to spend fighting the same person over what began as a single television segment about a beauty pageant controversy. And when you lay the entire timeline out end to end, the loser tweets, the citizenship threat with no constitutional basis, the Oval Office aside to a confused foreign leader, the AI-generated video mocking critics with a fake diagnosis, and running through all of it, a consistent refusal to ever actually engage with the substance of anything O'Donnell has said, you are left with a genuinely uncomfortable question that has nothing to do with comedy at all. Why does one woman, out of the millions of Americans who have criticized this president over the years, occupy this much space in his public life this consistently for this long? O'Donnell's own answer, that it comes down to what she represents rather than anything she has specifically said, is a theory, not a proven fact, and reasonable people can disagree about how much weight to give it. But it is a theory built on 20 years of specific, documented, repeatedly escalating behavior, not a hunch pulled from nowhere. A president who devotes public energy to a private citizen's engagement announcement, her health scare, her decision to live in another country, and a formal meeting with that country's head of government has told the public something about his own priorities and preoccupations, whether he intended to or not. Rosie O'Donnell did not ask to be the answer to that question for 2 decades. But at this point, after 20 years of receipts, she has more than earned the right to ask it out loud, on live television, and let the public draw its own conclusion about who has actually been unable to let this go. There is one more detail worth sitting with as this story closes out, because it says something the rest of the timeline only implies. O'Donnell has described the toll of this fight in explicitly medical language: post-traumatic stress, a PTSD response, twice in the same month from 2 different angles, once describing her own experience of the feud, and once theorizing about what she believes it triggers in Trump himself. Whether or not either of those clinical framings is precisely accurate in a diagnostic sense, the language itself reflects something real. 2 decades of sustained, public, presidentially amplified hostility has left a documented psychological mark on the person receiving it, by her own account, serious enough that she chose to leave her home country partly because of it. That is not a small cost to extract from a private citizen over the better part of 2 decades, regardless of how the feud first began, and it is worth remembering the human toll underneath all of the headlines, the AI-generated videos, and the Oval Office asides every time this story resurfaces yet again.